Hi everyone and welcome to Protocol 36. Thankfully a month ago during Comic Con, Marvel Studios announced a Daredevil show on Disney+, with Charlie Cox and Vincent D'Onofrio returning as Matt Murdock and Wilson Fisk, aka the Kingpin respectively, titled Daredevil Born Again, which will have 18 episodes. For all of that you already know, however for this video I want to speculate if we will see Spider-Man appear in Daredevil Born Again, and if so what kind of role will he have, especially given Kevin Feige's comment on the fact that both Daredevil and Spidey will be the face of the street level MCU. But before we get started, if at any point you enjoyed this video, I really appreciate it if you could give this video a like, as that would really help out the channel. Thank you. Now let's get into this. Like I mentioned before, since we already know that the show will have 18 episodes, being the longest Disney Plus show for a single season ever so far, at least as far as I know, if Tom Holland's Spidey were to appear, it could be any of them. Even if Matt doesn't remember Peter Parker anymore, like the rest of the world, he will still remember helping out Spider-Man with the mysterious situation as his lawyer. Not to mention as Vincent D'Onofrio back as Kingpin in the show, even though the character is now associated more with a Daredevil villain thanks to the Netflix show, as well as the multiple stories in the comics, being one of the best rivalries in the books period, at least in my opinion. He was first a Spider-Man villain in the source material, and even being one of the best and one of the most iconic Spider-Man villains. And with Vincent being asked multiple times about Spider-Man vs Kingpin, I think it's about time that we have Peter Parker and Wilson Fisk actually meet and fight this time, especially when he's also one of the villains that we haven't seen Spider-Man fight in live action. Spider-Man showing up in the series would also depend on the story and if it's right. Despite the title, I think it's safe to say that the show won't be adapting Frank Miller's Born Again story, since Daredevil Season 3 already did that and did a remarkable job in my opinion. I think the reason why Marvel Studios used the title was to suggest that Daredevil is back in the MCU. I mean, he's already in the MCU since the Netflix show is canon, but you know what I mean. He's under Kevin Feige and will show up in more projects, like we already know with She-Hulk and Echo, and most likely other MCU films, kinda like we saw with No Way Home, but this time as the devil of Hell's Kitchen. So when it comes to Spider-Man's and Daredevil story, I think if Spider-Man were to appear, it would most likely be one episode, maybe even two if we're lucky, but whatever episode it's gonna be, it will definitely have a massive impact, and Kingpin will definitely be the one to bring those two heroes together. Probably even have a similar team up like they would have in the comics and in the 90s Spider-Man cartoon, which was not only the show that introduced me to Spider-Man himself, but also many other Marvel characters including Daredevil. They could also use this opportunity to set Kingpin up to appear in Spider-Man 4, which would be perfect, and I would personally love that. Obviously if Spider-Man was going to be involved, then it's safe to say that Marvel might get another villain that will match Spider-Man blow for blow, since he is pretty OP. Obviously they don't have to, but if they do, then getting another villain like a version of Tombstone would be great, assuming the MCU doesn't want to go with this spectacular Spider-Man route, where he did essentially replace Kingpin in the show due to rights issues at the time. But when it comes to the story, we just have to wait and see as to what direction Marvel Studios will go. But speaking of rights issues, could this even be possible to begin with? Well, I think it depends on the deal both Marvel and Sony will make, especially according to Tom Rothman, where Tom Holland's Spidey is set to make one more appearance in an MCU related project, which will most likely be a movie, especially given that the She-Hulk writers really wanted to use Spider-Man in the show, but due to Marvel not having the full rights, they couldn't use him, which kinda upset them. And even though the character appeared in What If, and is set to have its own show Spider-Man freshman year, which is confirmed to have a season 2 set in sophomore year, both of them are animated, which allows Marvel to have freedom with the character. Plus a while ago it's been confirmed that freshman year isn't canon anymore, and it's set in a different universe where Norman Osborn goes to find Peter Parker instead of Tony Stark like he did in the main MCU timeline in Captain America Civil War. I think when it comes to Spider-Man in Born Again, if Marvel really wants to, they could try and make another deal with Sony that also includes TV appearances, and knowing Marvel Studios, I don't think they could pass up an opportunity like this. I would want to negotiate with the studio, especially when Matt appeared in Spider-Man No Way Home, which Sony also co-produced. So will Spider-Man appear in the Daredevil Born Again Disney Plus show? I think there's a chance, but ultimately due to rights issues, for now I find it unlikely. Obviously things could change in the future, and trust me, I really want this to happen, especially when it's going to have 18 episodes in its first season. But with what happened in She-Hulk, I don't know how possible it is now. And She-Hulk wasn't even the first MCU Disney Plus show to want Spider-Man to be in it. There's also Falcon and the Winter Soldier, though Kevin Feige stopped that himself because it wasn't right for the story, and Hawkeye as well for similar reasons. So if Marvel actually sits down with Sony to try and make it work, I would say never say never, so it's not impossible. For now though, I'm going to say unlikely. However, what about you guys? Do you think Spider-Man will appear in Daredevil Born Again? Let me know in the comments down below. I would love to hear your thoughts. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram and Twitter. If you enjoyed this video, please like, and one more subscribe. To begin, Protocol 36.